Now, let me take time to first of all define budgeting. So our topic today is budgeting, which is the allocation of income . Welcome to Finance Clinic, and I am your friend, the host, Dr. Pardon Mwansa. After presenting the last show on budgeting, I received comments from Livingstone, Mongu, Lusaka, Ndola, Chipata, Mumbwa. Just many people called in to raise questions or to make comments. There was one comment that caught my attention. It was a comment from some person from Mumbwa. The person simply said, "Dr. Mwansa, I owe so much, I have given up." I sent them one message. The message was simply, don't give up. So as we talk about the topic for today, I would like to work with you by simply telling you, please, whatever your financial situation might be, don't give up. Now, there are 3 levels of financial stress that I have seen people experience as I dialogue with them on finances. I have decided to talk about these levels instead of the signs. Level 1. Level 1 is where a person is failing to meet their needs in a regular way. They don't have maybe enough food, they don't have all the money they need to pay for education or for this and that. They are simply struggling to cover the entire month with their expenses and all their needs. That's level 1. But there is a second level, which is the same level 1, but now adding to that such a person has a debt. But they have a debt and they are making payments. This is a different level because at this level, you are trying to survive, but at the same time, you are now trying to make debt payments to those that you owe. This level is a much complex level than level 1. But level 3, which is you have needs that you are trying to meet, and then you have debt and you are failing to pay. When you are on level 3, where you have needs, you have debt, but you are even now failing to pay your needs, you are in a serious financial situation. My advice to those on level 1 and level 2 is simply to say, continue learning what we are teaching and you will find a way out of the lessons we are presenting for you to finally be reasonably free. But for those on level 3, where you have your needs and you are struggling and you have debt and you are failing to pay, that level is a very serious level. My counsel to such would be, please sit down, review what we are learning, and if possible, seek help from financial advisors so that they will get you out. Here is why I am stressing this for level 3. If you don't handle level 3 well, you can easily experience a divorce in marriage if you are in a marriage relationship. Because at that time when you have needs you are failing to meet, you have debt you cannot pay, you are likely to have tension in the home that can lead to a divorce. But maybe more than even the divorce, that situation in level 4 can cause your health. You can even get into depression. You can get into anxiety disorders because you start freaking when you know people are going to call you and you need to make payments, you need to do that. Please attend to that when you are in such a situation. Our topic today is budgeting for income, and that is what we are discussing. Many people actually think that budgeting has to do with allocating areas where you want to spend money. While that is part of budgeting, it is not complete. Budgeting is never complete when you only deal with the areas where you will be spending money. Budgeting has to do with identifying sources of income from where you will find money to spend. Some years ago, I was in one of the Eastern European countries, in the country of Romania. I was conducting a similar seminar on money management. When they advertised for my seminar, I was so shocked at the number of people that showed up on that day. The hall was packed to capacity. I mean, packed. When I started making my presentations, and in my presentations, I began talking about how people should allocate money in budgeting, where they want to spend money. And I was very prepared to do that. But after I had made a 30-minute presentation, somebody raised up their hand and simply said, "Doc, can I ask a question?" I said, "Okay, please go ahead and ask." Then they said, "Dr. Mwansa, before you teach us how to spend money, can you teach us how to make money? We don't have money. And because we don't have money, even if you teach us how to spend money, we will not spend money." I learnt my lesson. And so each time I have presented the concepts of budgeting, I do exactly what we did. I talk about budgeting as a whole. Then I spend a full presentation, which is what we are doing today, discussing budgeting for income, which is identifying sources of income in your budget. The first goal, and this is important, the first goal in budgeting is this. Your first task in budgeting is to understand how you will generate enough income from which to spend and meet your financial goals. Now get this clear. Your first task in budgeting is not to start putting where you will spend the money. Your first task is to understand how will you generate income, or where will you get income from, the income that you now want to spend on any of your things to help you meet your goals. This is the first task in budgeting. Now, many people, unfortunately, when they jump this stage, they find themselves in a situation in which they have more expenses and less income. When you see what I have put on the screen, you will see a scenario where the balance is tilted. There are more expenses on this budget than there is income. And as a result of this imbalance, whereby there is more expenses and less income, you find that many people give up budgeting because of this very situation on this slide. The situation on this slide makes people when they budget, they have more things to spend on, they have less income, so they just say, what's the point? After all, I don't have money, and they give up budgeting. This is why I have spent time to simply stress the point, and please get this point. You do not start budgeting by listing where you need to spend money. When you are constructing a budget, the first task is to identify where will your money come from. How much money will you have? And then when you have done that, and you know where your money will come from, how much money will come, that is the only time when you should now start listing your expenses appropriate to the amount you have identified from different sources of income. It's very important to understand this. Now let me discuss a mentality that I want us to carry as we go into the rest of the presentation. There are two mentalities that people carry, maybe more, on sources of income. First mentality is an employee mentality. An employee mentality looks to someone, it could be a person, an organization, or the government, for a job in order for them to earn a living or a salary. This employee mentality is what actually accounts for what happens in most countries, particularly developing countries like Zambia, where students go to the University of Zambia, they go to Rusangu University, they go to Mulungushi, they go to Copperstone, they go to Copperbelt University. They go there with the mindset of learning as much as they can, sharpening themselves so that they will be better qualified to be employed. It is an employee mentality, because even when a person is going through school, it never crosses their mind. There are people who will finish the entire bachelor's degree in 4 years. Some of them even finish their master's degree. They have never changed from an employee mentality. That's where they are stuck. The problem with being stuck in the employee mentality is that the only source of income that you therefore have could be your salary. Now this can be a big problem, because not everybody will compete in the field of education. Some may not. And based on where you went to school, you have a priority for a job and all of that. This mentality is okay, but it is insufficient. Let me look at the second mentality. The second mentality is that of an employer mentality. This is a mentality that looks to self for creative ways to create a business that will give you money for living. An employer mentality is different from the employee mentality. The employer mentality does not look to another person, to an organization, or to the government to find a job to do for them to have an income. An employer mentality will look to self. They will ask themselves, based on the skills I have, based on my personal, individual assets, the who I am, the me that I am, what can I do to create a job for myself, and that job will pay me? The major difference between these two is that one will be poor and stay suffering as long as there is no job found in the market. The other one will not, because they are not looking to organizations, to another person, or to government. They are looking from themselves. These are the people who will make use of anything they have within them to fight to create a job. They could even be educated people. They may not even be educated, but they have a skill. I'll give you an example. A person who has finished a bachelor's degree but does not find a job and has an employer mentality, they will ask the question, that is, out of the skills I have, how can I use my skills to find something to do that will give me a job? How can I be the source of what I want to do? Now, let me say something. I am not saying you should be either or. But what I am saying is you should be you should aim at being both. Until obviously you graduate to become an employer, and being an employer becomes sufficient for you not even to remain in employment. But my balanced position is have both mentalities. An employee mentality, which is committed to service, given to you in a job by somebody. But go further than that. Have an employer mentality. And I'll give you examples because I don't want this to just be some theoretical speeches. No. An employer mentality is one that will think in terms of, I have a job, I'm an employee, but what else can I do from the little money I'm getting from my job or from just the hands I have? Let me share a story I had. When I worked in Zimbabwe, in Harare, some years ago, I needed to have a garden for vegetables. I was passing by and I saw a very beautiful garden, and there was a gentleman working there. So I began talking to him, and after I talked to him, I told him, would you be interested in a job that I could give you? And he agreed. To cut the long story short, I employed this person to work in my garden. I had a fairly large piece of land within my yard. The person was able to grow vegetables enough to pay their salary and enough to supply my home and excess to sell at the market. This person made 3 times than their salary that they took out. In the meantime, when this person was at home working, I was at the office working. So I then had an employee state where I'm working as an employee, but at the same time, I'm an employer who has employed somebody. Now, how I wish that people like that gentleman I had employed could simply come to the realization that I don't have to work for Dr. Mwansa. After all the money that Dr. Mwansa is paying me, I made it. After all the vegetables Dr. Mwansa is eating in his home, in addition to my salary, I am the one who's growing it. After all the money I'm getting for my salary, all the vegetables Dr. Mwansa is eating, and all the vegetables that I'm selling at the market, I'm the one doing it. What he did not have maybe is a piece of land and maybe a little bit of initial capital to start, but that person could easily become an employer and move from an employee mentality to an employer mentality. This concept I have shared is extremely important as we discuss budgeting for income. Because as you look for sources of income, I want you to be aware that it does not have to be a salary. Please, it does not have to. And there are many of you watching via television who are so creative that you can actually employ many people if you could only mentally move from being an employee mentality to an employer mentality. Now, in the sources of income that you will list in your budget, you need to aim at having diversified sources of income. Now, in the diversification of income, it's simply the concept that you should not rely on only one source of income. The challenge we have in life is if your only source of income is a salary from a job, what if, for reasons we may not know or may not even control, that company collapses and it has no job or you are retrenched? Then if you had only one source of income, then you are stuck. Now, I have listed, and I would like to share this, some of the areas you could consider for sources of income. When you watch carefully on the slides that's there, you have your salary, of course, which is your major source of income to many of us. I have spoken enough about that. I'll speak a little bit about it. But then the next one is always include on your sources of income bank interests. Bank interests. Now, somebody is already saying, but Dr. Mwansa, how can I budget income from bank interests? Because I thought the bank interests assume I have money in the bank. And you are right. You are right. If you are going to develop a well-rounded quality life of managing your finances well, you need to have savings in the bank, savings that generate you interest on a monthly basis or interest on a term certificate. Now, please, I know many of you might be struggling with just the basic needs. You already are struggling to make payments and you are already failing to make payments. But please, you will not accomplish a successful financial life if you don't have savings. I'll speak about savings as a whole topic in the future. But for now, you should always put savings in your income because you should always have an amount in the bank that you are not touching. And trust me, if you were disciplined enough, the word is discipline, you can have money in the bank for savings. You know, let me share with you something about savings and before I move to the next point. You know, savings is like paying your rental for the house. The only difference is the rental has consequences because if you don't pay, they can throw you out. But the same way you routinely find money to pay for rentals is the same way you would routinely find money to pay or to put in your savings. The other source of income is obviously the soil. Gardening, as it were. Shall I call it farming? You know, there are many people who have not realized the value of farming. Farming is actually so effective as a means of income that actually you would be surprised if you just took little interest in doing basic farming, which could just be the raising of chickens or keeping some goats or having a garden of vegetables. The point being, you can also have a garden or a farm as a source of income. Obviously, rentals. If you have property, you can put that as your source of income. The other thing is assets. Assets is another source of income that can go into the budget that many people don't make use of. Now, obviously, I'm using the word asset here as a means to income. And many of you understand, hopefully, the difference with that. What is listing an asset as an income? If you go to many people today, you will find they have many things that they have. They have a farm. They have a land they have never even been to. They have clothes in their closet. They have some vehicle that doesn't move. They have many things they have collected that are of value. When you are making a budget for the coming year, you can actually identify assets you don't use. Assets that are not giving you anything but are just being wasted. You can turn them into an income and actually budget for them by deciding to dispose of them at some point. Obviously, business, we understand there are a lot of people who do business trading here and there, and we talked already about savings as a means. So I will simply now address the next one, which is how to raise your income, your salary. Now, I'm talking about your salary. In other words, now as an employee. And I thought I should spend a little time on this because to many people, it's their employment that gives them a job. There are many ways you can increase your income while in your job. Please listen to this. Number one, upgrading yourself while you are on your job. Upgrading yourself while you are on your job is maybe you began working when you just had a diploma, a 2-year degree. You are working and you are earning a salary and you are okay. Remember, if you are still working, nobody has stopped you from going back to school to improve yourself and upgrade yourself while on work or while on duty or while on your job rather. You know, when you look at when you are working, you attend this seminar, you do this, all of that helps you to develop your ability to perform your job well, and it can enhance your salary. Academic growth, growing academically. Let me restate this. For those on regular salary, even those not on regular salary, to upgrade yourself academically will always advantage you on an income. I'll give you an example, simple example. I have my salary as an employee. But you know, in the academic attainment, I am able, with my academic background, to have this school send dissertations to me, or master's thesis, or PhD dissertations, and say, go ahead and work on them and we will pay you. Now, that is something you will not easily get unless you continue upgrading yourself. Now, that's an extreme example, maybe, but the point I am making is every level of education you acquire, you make yourself be able to do more things and thereby improve your income. Number 3, improving your work ethics. There are many people today whose salaries remain the same because the only reason their employers have kept them in employment is because they perform the basic performance. They generate reports, they do the things they do. Your work ethics refers to how you work. If, for example, you report for work on time, your reports are submitted on time, you are all the time doing extra things that are good, you are honest, you are hardworking, trust me, promotions come to people who are hardworking. Promotions come to people who are honest. Promotions come to people whose work ethic is above an average person. And obviously the last one, acquire new skills. You know, there are many who are stuck in the job they have. They went to school and did a bachelor's degree in business administration. And all they do is that which relates to that. Acquiring a skill is something that you can almost do like a hobby. When you acquire a skill, that skill can be used as a means to generate income. I'll give you an example. For those of you who are in the academic world, you can decide to write, to be an author. And when you start authoring books, it may help you. There are many of you who are accountants. You can pick up different things you can do. Do I need to mention it? You are brilliant enough to know. The bottom line is acquisition of skills, plumbing skills, painting skills, carpentry, name them, including farming. All these things will help you. They will lead you to a person who has more sources of income, even from not just your job, but from the skills that you have. The question is asked, who should contribute to the income in the budget? The answer is every beneficiary from a budget must be a contributor. Now, I know I'm going to tread on very, very jelly ground here because of culture. There are certain places or certain cultures where you will find one bread earner in a house who reports for a job, has a job, and they are the only people, or that's the only person who brings an income at home. The rest of the people, the wife, the children, the relatives, they sit home and just wait to eat. Contributors to the income of the budget should be everybody who benefits from the money in the home. If you sit around that table and eat food, that food did not come by an accident. Somebody worked for it. And if you have the ability, if you are just yourself, you can also be a contributor. For example, while somebody is working, you can be working in the garden and reduce the expense by generating income from the garden. Children should be contributors to the budget in a home if they stay in that home. My son or my sons and my daughters know very well that when we were raising them as young people, we encouraged them to know that there is no free meal in life. So one day when my son had finished his bachelor's degree and had a job, he came to me and said to me, "Dad, do I need to contribute toward the rent by staying in your house?" We laughed about it. But I told him, I said, "Son, I would appreciate." Now, it was our house, I wasn't paying, but I still wanted my son to be responsible by also being a contributor to the total budget. Relatives and dependents who stay in homes are not excused from this, including in-laws. I mean, we all live together. Let's work together. Let's all be contributors to the budget. I hope this is sinking. Now, let me talk briefly about habits that should not be used or unethical means of generating income. Obviously, cheating, stealing, killing in all its forms are not good means of making an income. Because when you are cheating or stealing or killing to make income, you are actually depriving yourself of good habits and quality life by depriving others also of their quality life. These habits are not good and should be refrained from because they don't help and they don't build you. Now let me talk briefly about habits that affect income. Number one, oversleeping. Number two, laziness. Number 3, dependency mentality, depending on other people to always do things for you. Number 4, watching too much television. Of course, not watching Finance Clinic. Finance Clinic will help you. But not watching those movies. I don't want to mention countries here. And obviously, too much of being on the phone, too much of cell phone will take you away from doing meaningful things that will help you generate income. I want you to write a sample of budgeting for income as it is on the screen, but using your own ideas. For example, column 1, list the sources of income. Put there your salary, your spouse's salary, bank interests, assets, animals or farm, and then have a total. I just want you to explore, to go beyond what you do right now. You will notice actually that on this quarterly budget, January, February, and March, there are some income that I have not listed in January because I'm not planning to sell that asset in January, so I've listed it in March, in February. There are some assets I've listed in January, like an animal, because maybe I'll sell one of my animals in January and the rest of the year, the months I won't. So have a feel of writing sources of income in this manner. This is your major assignments for today. And I want you to spend time on it. So 2 things, please. Creatively think deeply, think outside of the box about where you can make money, including the areas we've talked about today. But then secondly, attempt to draw a sample of budgeting for income, just income. Don't go to expenses. Expenses will be featured in our next show. So I hope to see you again. It's every Sunday at 20 hours. You will have a new show that you will watch. In the meantime, as you watch and listen to these things, if you have a question, please do not hesitate to send me a text at the number appearing on the screen, 09633 Until we see you another time, stay blessed.